Good evening and welcome to the continuation of the special town council meeting. Today is Monday, April 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. This is the resumption of suspended meeting from March 31st, 2022 in the McKinnon Council chambers. Agenda item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda item 3, roll call. Mary?
Councillor Adams?
Present.
Councillor Catrona? Absent. Councillor Daniel?
Present.
Councillor Dow?
Present.
Councillor Jovan?
Excused.
Councillor Lazo? Councillor Marchetti?
Present.
Councillor Ryan?
Excused.
And Councillor Steves?
Present. Very good. We have a quorum. Agenda item number 4, Citizens Forum. Are there any citizens in the audience that would like to approach the podium and discuss an item not on the agenda this evening? There being none, let's move on to agenda item number 5. Consider and accept the special town council minutes of Monday, March 31st, 2022.
So moved. Second.
Very good. Any corrections, additions, deletions?
No.
Very good. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Unanimous of all present. Agenda item number 6, continue the presentation of the budget by the town manager, Mr. Michael McCall.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I would just ask up front whether you want me to start from the beginning or pick up approximately where I left off.
I think you can pick up.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, just for those who are tuning in, I would just say that, you know, I worked with my staff and several of our finance team members are here this evening, Ms. Harnois as well as Ms. Ashley, our treasurer, that when we put together this budget, we do it consistent with the Mass General laws, the town of Southbridge Home Rule Charter, as well as the fiscal policies set forth in the rules and regs by this town council. So if you quickly, let me just then jump ahead. I want to say I left off on about slide 30, which was about halfway through. So I will come down here. Why don't I pick up right here. And for those tuning in, you can find the first half of this up on YouTube. As many people may or may not know, we had an electrical storm the previous Thursday, and so we lost power here at Town Hall, so we had to suspend this presentation. So the balance of that can be found out on our YouTube site, Southbridge Community Television. So about the time we left, we were talking about the American Rescue Plan, and I brought it up only to discuss the fact that although these are one-time revenues, they will have an impact on our budget because we will be working some of these dollars into our capital plan. Any monies that we do use in water and sewer would help offset rates, but these monies, as we've discussed, and Vice Chairman Adams is working on an ad hoc committee to look at how to use these ARPA funds. These will be of great value to create some type of projects which will make a lasting impact on the town of Southbridge. We have $3.4 million left. We've already appropriated or encumbered $1.63 million, but in the next 2 years we need to determine how best to use this $3.4 million, and it will play a role in how we do our budgeting and what projects we pick and choose as we go forward. So this is an overview of the FY 2023 expenses. You can see the increase or decrease on the far right. Most of the impact, as we talked about last time, is in school. We get an unprecedented increase in our school Chapter 70 monies, which was also offset by an increase in net school spending. But this is why we got these revenues. We have these offsetting expenses now. And then you can see the rest of the departments. It's, again, the charter school assessments have gone up, our other assessments, but the charter school, retirement has gone up to 5%, but Southbridge Public Schools has gone up the most at 7%. I put a breakdown, as I did last year, just showing you since 2015, roughly a 5 to 6 year overview. And you can see that in most cases, everything has stayed roughly the same. Education still plays a major role in our expenditures. It takes up about half the budget at 53%. But there have been some other changes that it's worth noting year over year. Fire has gone down a little bit from 5% to 4%. Public Works, in one of my growth charts, shows that the revenue coming in there has been shrinking over time, but you still see that it's consistent, the amount of money we spend. But the intergovernmental assessments, those are those charter school assessments and other assessments that we receive the state, have increased from 3% to 5%, which is making a difference in where we can put the rest of our allocations in our budget. And this is those growth rates that I talked about. You can see which departments are growing the fastest since 2015. The growth rates are across the bottom. And the intergovernmental assessments, the growth rate in those 6 years has been 11%. That's essentially the year-over-year average. Police of our departments has increased 3%. But then when you start looking, Public Works, the budget has actually decreased the growth rate and the amount of money that we're spending over time. Now, some of that could be due to staffing changes. It also could be due to the pandemic. But the benefit of tracking this way, we can see the year-over-year comparisons and look at the growth rates, and will allow us to adjust in future years. But again, when we are required to spend a significant amount of money on schools, it does leave, less than half of the budget for us to divvy up, and we do have non-discretionary spending that we have to deal with. And then afterwards, then we can allot our money based on the individual departments. So going forward, we may have to look at how we divvy up some of this pie relative to other departments, other EMS departments, fire, public safety, as well as our human services and our recreation. So I put in some trend lines. The top is our total expenses, as you can see, and they've been steadily increasing. The bottom is our fixed or non-discretionary expenditures, and those tend to be made up of our contractual obligations, our debt, and retirement. So those are things that we really can't change. So those have continued to increase on a regular basis, which would limit our ability to make changes if we ever had to make a reduction in any type of service going forward, because those are things that we couldn't cut out of the budget. So, and they make up almost a third or a little more than a third of our total expenses. When we were doing the financial trend monitoring, and I won't spend a lot of time, I will send you this presentation, you'll get the definition. One of the concerns is we continue to see increasing fixed costs, such as our health insurance, our retirement, our debt. One thing is our debt is not a particular issue. We've been able to run off some of our debt, and I'll have a slide to that, but we're not increasing at an extremely rapid rate, but it's just something to keep an eye on. But based on the ICMA, the trend when you have increasing year-over-year fixed costs is not something they like to see. The government-wide ratios is something that I started putting in years ago when I first created this in other communities. And really this just looks at a bunch of different indicators that are used to look at where you are relative to your assets, your liabilities, your solvency, the net position. These are all favorable numbers. I won't go into the definitions. I can supply those with this. But when you look at our cash solvency, how much money we have relative to our assets and liabilities, we have positive growth in those categories all the way across the board. Just in 2020, which was probably due to COVID, we had a slight deficit per capita, but our revenues had bounced back under budget solvency, which shows that we did have a lot of free cash this year, which is a favorable indicator. They also look at sustainability as our ability to collect taxes, our revenues and expenses. Those numbers have been fairly stable, slowly increasing, but again, what the ICMA looks at with these particular numbers, they're all favorable in our case, as well as our long-term solvency. That talks about our liability to asset ratio. Again, all reasonable numbers and looking good for Southbridge, and you'll have the definitions so that we don't run out of time. These individual slides will explain each one of those categories, and as I quickly go through liquidity, our ability to take the cash we have on hand, it's indicated to be favorable. Similarly, our operational performance, because we are ending in the year in a positive situation with free cash. Revenue per capita, we're not seeing a decrease. We have a healthy tax base, and our revenue, we can rely on that tax base. Similarly, our expenses are rapidly increasing. Our ability to leverage all of our liabilities, favorable. Some of these I did change. Our long-term debt, the way we manage it, and previously the trend was unfavorable, and this is one of the 4 categories that I've actually moved to neutral because of the way they look at the data over the last few years and the turnaround and what we've been doing with our debt. I think I would categorize this as neutral. So I've seen some improvement in the last 2 years. So now moving on to some other aspects. I did this slide last year looking at the full-time equivalents in the town. We did have some increases. The majority of those increases last fiscal year as well as this fiscal year have been in response to COVID. Dr. Villar in his presentation last year indicated that he had to hire a lot of people due to the way they had to conduct school, had to have bus monitors. A lot of other people were brought on in response to the pandemic. But you can see on the bottom line, the full-time equivalents here at Town Hall have not really changed. And actually, we're down a few people because we have a couple of positions that have been open. We talked about this a couple times, so I thought I'd put a slide chart up there, and I hope people can see it at home. It's color-coded, and any of those positions in color have had some type of impact in the last 12 months since we were here last year. The blue positions are all brand-new people to town. Everybody in a blue position. So we have a new assessor, treasurer, my executive assistant, a new confidential clerk. We have a new clerk in the accounting department, an assistant assessor. We have a new person in the collector's office. We have a new health inspector, a part-time person in the building office. We have a new admin in the economic development director and a new assistant administrator. The green positions are brand new positions that we created, and those are new faces as well. So we have a new HR director, a new benefits coordinator, and a new confidential clerk. Any of the positions in red are the ones that we did away with those positions during the reorg of the HR department. So we got rid of the economic development director, one of the HR specialists, and one of the payroll clerks, and we combined that position. The positions that are in yellow are actually ones that are open right now that we're looking to fill in this upcoming budget. So if you total those up, and I forgot to total it, but I think we have about 41 positions on this chart, and there's roughly 22, I think, have changed hands. So we've essentially had a 50% turnover in the faces at Town Hall in the last year, which is quite extraordinary. You know, I've worked in a bunch of different municipalities, and one of the things you often see in a town hall is consistency. You see people come in and you recognize the same faces in the clerk's office, and that's the great thing of the familiarity. But COVID and the Great Resignation hit us like they've hit every other community. We had people that were approaching retirement that chose to retire early. We had people whose spouses or themselves were given an opportunity of a lifetime to go somewhere else and relocate. We had quite a few people relocate out of Southbridge to a new endeavor. So we wish all of these people that have left us well and future success where they've landed. And we're very happy to have quite a lot of talented people that have come on board. As I said, Ms. Ashley is one of our new hires, and she's worked out quite well. I would say she's done an excellent job coming on board, and all of these people have, because they had to come up to speed in a very short order. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention all of their names, and I can because I've met them all, but every one of them has had to jump in and pick up very quickly. For instance, in Ms. Ashley's department, we have somebody that they started right away. They didn't even wait 2 weeks. They came right in and they hit the ground running. So we've been fortunate to pick up good people who could pick up the torch and run with it, including Ms. Harnois. Assistant Christine Russell has been a great addition to the town hall staff. She's brought in a lot of munis experience and has been a great asset. They all have, and so I don't want to list all 22 people, but it's been an extraordinary event, as I said, COVID and what's happened with the staffing, but I think we've benefited, and we're looking forward to filling some of these remaining positions with the same type of talent that we've been fortunate to get in the last year. So part of that brings us to the discussion of employee health care. This top slide shows what we've been spending on in terms of health care in the last couple of years, and you've noticed we've had a bit of a decrease. That has been the result of some employee turnover and some people not taking our insurance. You can see the growth rate in our healthcare cost has come down somewhat in the last couple of fiscal years, while we've had, this doesn't reflect last fiscal year, but up till fiscal year 2021, we had a slight growth rate reduction in our number of employees and then number of employees per 1,000 residents. Because I couldn't get consistent data from all of my sources, I didn't put the CPI, but the CPI, as we all know, the Consumer Price Index, has been increasing, though, recently due to inflation. But the long and short of this is meeting with the staff that's here present this evening, as well as our new HR director, Adriana Robena. We looked at the savings that we've incurred and the turnover and the comments that have come back from our department heads with regard to our ability to recruit and retain quality individuals, that we are going to be proposing in this FY 2023 budget that the town adjust its split on the insurance from 60-40, the town currently pays 60% of the insurance premiums for our employees, to a 70-30 split. And we think that will make us more competitive with our surrounding communities, who will allow us to attract good quality candidates and retain the people we already have. We've worked the numbers, and we don't think there'll be a significant impact because of the savings we've seen in recent years that we can work this in. Mr. Chenier is here in the audience. I'm not going to ask him to get up, but he's involved with the Insurance Advisory Committee, which we've worked to start meeting again, and I'm informed and believe that at the last meeting that they had talked about putting together a recommendation that they have to bring forward here, that they are in support of this type of move to pick up more on the town side. Is that correct, Mr. Chenier? Yes. So we think overall it will be positive for the employees. You know, these are the same people who were here during the pandemic when other town halls shut down. We can't do a lot of things that other communities can, but I believe that providing good quality health care is a must, and it is something that would be available to all employees, and it's one way of recognizing the commitment to our current staff, but also to help us recruit quality people going forward. And that last slide talked about employees per capita. Our trends, we've tried to keep those numbers down. We're not increasing our overall head count, at least on the town hall side, so that's a favorable trend. Our tax levy, I put in, it's been growing, part because we don't get, even though we got an extraordinary amount of state aid this year, year over year, we're not getting the state aid that we used to in terms of trends. So we're having to rely slightly more year over year on our tax levy. The other thing that has impacted our tax levy this year, as many of you know, COVID has driven up the value of real estate, which has also increased the amount of people's tax bills based on their valuation. We still have $966,000 of excess levy capacity. So that means we can we're taxing up to $24 million. If we had to increase the budget, we have excess levy capacity. If we wanted to touch into the light blue on these charts, that's where we would be looking at having to do some type of override. And we've talked that at some point, in order to address the curbside situation, we may need to look at that as a potential revenue source using an override. Breakdown of our tax levy. As I've indicated, there's been an increase on the residential levy. It's gone up 2% over the last 5 years. And where you're seeing the shrink is in the commercial levy. As you know, Ms. Dean's working on economic development issues, and we're looking to bring in as much business as possible. We've looked at a variety of different things. I got an email from Senator Fatman's office the other day that our bill to get the additional liquor licenses for the various sections of town is moving forward. It's been approved by Senate Council. It's going to move over to the House. You know, these are part of our efforts to bring businesses into town. So hopefully we'll see these numbers change back in the next year to two, that we'll see more of the share of the levy being passed on to the businesses as we continue to do infrastructure projects and other projects to attract businesses to Southbridge. This is not moving. And this is just to show you the growth rate in the taxes. The total assessed value of the town has been increasing since 2014. The growth rate there has been 5%. Our tax rate has grown roughly 3.9% over those 8 years. So we could probably adjust the tax rate more, but we haven't. This is a breakdown of how the property tax bill has changed, and what our rank is out of 351 cities and towns. The bill, you can see, has changed. Our tax rate has gone down in part because the value of the properties has increased. In FY 2022, the average value of a single-family home is increased to $238,000. That's up $24,000 over the previous year. And the tax bill did go up approximately $100. So the 5-year increase, it's increased 3.76% for a total of almost $700 on a single-family home. Again, property values have been increasing, which is favorable pursuant to the ICMA's trends. Our tax collections, they dipped during COVID, but they begin to turn around as we come into 2021 and going into 2022. Again, that should generate us a favorable condition that our uncollected property taxes are back in the green. Our debt service is a total percentage of revenue. We have debt coming off. As you know, the school project will be coming off. So we did a 10-year projection of where our debt will be. We're currently carrying almost $40 million of debt now, and that's combined of the general fund outstanding debt as well as enterprise and the excluded Bay Path debt. But those will be slowly coming down in the next 5 to 10 years. So what we would probably be looking to do is various capital projects so that we keep an even level of debt so that we don't become too lean. You want to keep even in your own household, you may want to keep a certain level of debt so that if something arises, you don't want to pay off everything and not be in a position in the event something comes up and you have to take out debt. So you try and manage your debt to keep an even zone essentially operating, and our long-term projection shows us paying off, so we will have capacity at a later point in time should we need to take on more projects. Keeps bringing up the wrong slide. Again, debt service favorable based on the ICMA. Our stabilization fund balance has steadily increased over the last, I put in here, almost 15 years. The stabilization fund is a percentage of total revenue. That has continued to grow, so these, again, are favorable trends. It shows that the town has solid reserves. So, again, the town is in a good position. Our free cash, this year we had over 2.5 million, roughly 2.9 million. Shows that we're working with an operating surplus, again, favorable, and it shows free cash as a percentage of the budget. Most towns want to keep in right around 3% of your total operating budget, and if you look at that trend line, we're hovering right about that. So again, favorable. Our pension liability, our unfunded pension liability, we've been actually making a significant dent. And if you look at the top right, the unfunded per full-time employee, that's a trending ticker that you watch in the ICMA. That's been going down. We're required to make a certain contribution every year. The same is not true for OPEB, which stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits, but we're on a schedule to pay off our pension liability, and what that is to do is to create a trust fund so that we can work off of that to pay pension benefits for employees in the future. So based on the schedule, which gets updated every couple of years, we are continuing to make headway. And as you can see, our funded ratio, which means how close we are to getting to that goal, has increased steadily since 2016, where we're at 59.5%, and we're upwards of 74.11%. The other contributing factor is the economy was doing well and the stock market was doing well, so that helps us achieve that goal as well. So that, too, is a favorable trend for Southbridge. But the converse is our OPEB liability, and I've talked with Ms. Harnois about using some of our free cash to contribute to that. This is one of the factors that the bond rating folks will look at, how we're dealing with this liability. And you can see in the bottom, our funded ratio relative to what you saw for the pension is quite low. We're just about 4% funded of where we should be. But the difference, again, there's mandatory minimum requirements for funding on the pension, but not so much on the OPEB liability. Therefore, it's incumbent upon the towns to contribute at least a reasonable amount, if not, a better amount to try and deal with this liability. And it becomes a difficult choice in budgeting depending upon your community. If you have other pressing needs, all too often it's something that's overlooked or put on a back burner. But again, this is something that we're going to have to deal with. This is insurance for our retirees. So we need to make a continued effort to put a little more aside each year to help extinguish this debt, and also to curry favor with those bond rating agencies that come in and want to see how we're managing these liabilities. Because we're still such a low rate, a low funding ratio, this continues to be what I would deem an unfavorable situation for Southbridge. I looked at our capital assets versus net depreciation, and because we haven't started a lot of these capital projects, we've been doing some water and sewer projects. As we start to work on facilities, including the fire station, that should turn some of this around, that our capital assets will begin to appreciate. But I just put up a slide as I did last year. The only difference is the age on all these buildings has gone up by a year, but the average age of a building in this town is 70 years old. And obviously we have some outliers. The middle high school is only 11 years old, but as you can see on the left-hand side, a lot of the town-owned buildings are well over 100 years old, and the vast majority are well over 50 years old. So there's nothing wrong with having old buildings. They're beautiful buildings, but some of them require more maintenance than others. And several of those are the elementary schools. And, I've talked with Dr. Villar, and we've talked about putting together a proposal for a school building assistance application. And I know he'll be coming forward to talk about that so that we can go out and get the best bang for the dollar for Southbridge by putting a lot of these projects that need, or a lot of these buildings that need maintenance, especially some of these schools that need roofs, in an aggregate application so that we can get these fixed and continue to maintain the assets that we currently have. That double-clicked, I can't go back, but really what that was showing is because of the age of our buildings and our capital asset values going down, that's an unfavorable trend. It implies that, we have aging buildings. And as I said, we have a lot of older buildings. That doesn't mean they're necessarily bad facilities. We just require more upkeep. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of great information from the U.S. Census. I did work in the new 2020 census. Those numbers came out and showed that our population had gone up over 17,000 residents this current year. So you can see between the last census, we had a bit of a dip because back in 2010, the numbers came out around 2012, and it showed that we dropped from 17,500 to about 16,600. And that trend is reversed with the new census. I did not get any updated information from the Collins Center, but the last information that I received was consistent with what we had observed up until last year, which is the number of younger people has tended to decline a bit while our population is aging. There's nothing, again, wrong with that mix. It's just that when you look at these financial trends, the ICMA wants to see a healthy blend of people in your community because you often have different levels of service needs for each demographic. Sometimes, the aging population has a different requirement. They may need more EMS, where if you have an overabundance of younger families, you may be looking at putting in schools. The breakdown, roughly 50-50 on male, female, and you can look at the age breakdown on the left-hand side. It's fairly well distributed, but again, slightly more than half of our population is tending to be over 40. So it's something that we would like to attract, more young people. And we think by doing some of these projects that you see, the Wells projects is for 55 and older, but some of these K Street projects will create opportunities for younger families. And as we continue to work on the schools, hopefully we'll attract more people, and that will also, people come where people are. That's an expression you often hear. If you have a social gathering, it attracts more people. So if we are bringing more people into town with these new developments, and as we make the improvements to the school, we should see that trend continue. Again, the population continue to increase. That's favorable. Population under 18 and over 64, those two bookends are not exactly what the ICMA would prefer to see, we don't see enough younger and an increasing population as it gets over 64, so we want to attract more families into town to help offset that trend. Workforce data, surprisingly well, not surprisingly, but interestingly enough, I should say, I got workforce data from the Commonwealth, and it shows that the income per capita, that wasn't really what I was saying was interesting. We've continued to rise in this community, but the unemployment rate has dropped, and I think that you could see the spike with COVID, but I think Southbridge is a resilient community, and the fact that the incomes have continued to rise and the unemployment rate has gone down, and as I've said before, our collections have gone up on taxes and our local receipts have gone up, indicates that this is a solid community that has been able to withstand, pretty much you've had floods over the years in 55 and even further back, and the pandemic was something that hopefully we'll never see again in our lifetimes, but it's clear from the trends that I was looking at that Southbridge has weathered that storm and bounced back quite well. Again, the per capita income is a positive trend, as well as the employment base that we're seeing a decreasing unemployment. I tend to finish up every year with projections. So we look at all the growth rates and we look at the numbers that we've had previously, and we try and look forward to see what those trends will predict for us in the future. So here we are going into 2023. Applying the growth rates that we have to the revenue sources that we've examined in this presentation, the trends are favorable. So this is the projection of where we see, or at least I see, the revenue going. We will continue to see the dark blue is in the bottom, your tax levy. In the middle, you have light blue, that's state aid. As I've indicated before, it isn't rising as fast as our tax levy, but it has been increasing year over year, which is positive. It increased more this year than last year, and we hope that trend continues. Our local receipts have been strong, and those are going forward, and other revenues can include grants and other monies. So this, again, is a positive trend for Southbridge. So what has changed on this particular chart this year versus last year? Our elastic revenues, which are our local receipts, last year because of COVID, they had gone down, so the trend there I had previously listed as unfavorable because it has bounced back. I put it at neutral. The only reason I didn't put favorable is it's been 1 year. Come this time next year, if the trend continues, I would say that would be green. Similarly, our long-term debt, based on some changes, that went from unfavorable to favorable. Our operating deficit or surplus, last year, that was unfavorable because of COVID. We didn't have the monies at the end of the year based on the calculations that the ICMA looks at, but that's turned around this year. as well as our pension obligation has continued to rise. So this year, there's more green on that screen than there was last year. Again, I think that's positive trend and good news for Southbridge. You know, the budget did go up $4 million over last year, but overall, we are making progress in a lot of fronts, and I think the next time we go out for bond rating, I think it would be great if the town could see a change in its bond rating, but that's not for us to say. But the financial trends that at least I'm seeing using the tools that the ICMA has provided shows that we have a lot of things to be proud about and a lot of things to sell the town on when we go out to people that look at who we are and who want to lend money to us. Lastly, you do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. I did this last year. Our strengths are our cash reserves, our tax revenue, and our property values. Our opportunities continue to be our bond rating, as I mentioned, our debt structure, our new tax growth, and capital improvement, and we're working on all those, and ARPA will help us with the capital improvement as well. Our weaknesses still tend to be our levy capacity. Although our excess levy capacity went up this year, we have to be mindful of that. State aid is not where it should be proportionally to where it has been in the past, and we have to watch those local receipts. We would like to increase those. Threats are our fixed costs, as I indicated before. Aging population, it's not truly a threat, but you know, we want to make sure we have a healthy balance of our population, and the way we, in my mind, the way we do that is getting our schools out of receivership and making Southbridge school system a selling point for people that want to move into these new housing projects that are coming up. And lastly, as I said, our liabilities, pension, we are doing better on the pension liability, but the OPEB liability still tends to be of concern. So as I finished last year, I like the tagline that although we are the eye of the Commonwealth, but we still keep our eye on the future. And I appreciate your time and attention, and I again thank all of my staff that has helped contribute to this. We couldn't do this without the talented team that we have. We have Ms. Harnois, our finance director, Ms. Ashley, our assessor. Our collector, Rachel Carney, is our new assessor. She helped out, as well as my staff, Nora El Gadiri, Gail Raduca, and Amy Stanton. They all played a big role in putting this material together. So I appreciate the hard work that all of our employees have done, again, in this second year of the pandemic. It's clear that we're out of the water at this point, and I hope we don't have to go through anything like that again. But I appreciate all of the efforts of our employees in helping to make Southbridge a better place for its current residents and its future residents. And I look forward to going through the budget at the various budget hearings and subcommittee in the next coming weeks and working towards passing this for FY 2023. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd like to also thank the team, Mr. McCauley and the team, for the work that he's done. I think it's been an exemplary budget presentation. I believe it's a 13-page executive summary that we have just to start with, plus all the material as well to go through. I can't say enough about it. It really is a good blueprint for what we're trying to accomplish here in town. Are there any comments or questions by the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't have my notes in front of me, but I may have neglected to thank our new HR director and assistant town manager, Adriana Rabena, as well as I want to thank Dr. Villar and Seth Racine over at the school department, because they do play a huge role in the budgeting process, and Ms. Harnois and I had worked with them along the way. And actually, there are a couple numbers that were in the first part of the presentation that I have some corrections. So before I send this out to the council, I will put those in. But again, I want to make sure that no one gets left out. It is a team effort, and I appreciate all of their assistance.
Duly noted. Very good. Are there any councilors that would like to comment? Councilor Steves.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll save the specifically budget-related questions for our sessions in subcommittee. But I was curious about the trend analysis thing, where you said that the increased expenses are considered favorable, which seems contradictory sense to me. It seems like it would be unsustainable.
Well, I think you want to see a proportional increase, in certain expenditures, it shows that you are continuing to grow. When I send this out, I'll have the summary, each one of them. If you didn't have any increase in expenses, you wouldn't be making an investment in a community. So there has to be some level of increase. I think you have to look at how the increase is proportional to the revenues you're taking in. If they're exceeding your revenues, then you have a problem.
Yeah, I can see
You're
that.
running into a deficit. So as long as they're increasing proportionally with the revenue, it's a favorable indication. It's just if you get out of balance, that's really the issue there.
Okay.
Anything else?
For the moment, no, thanks.
Very good. Anyone else? Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I have started going through the budget, and the only comments that I have is I think that some of the department heads, I think their requests this year are quite high. As an example, the DPW last year was 1.2%, which I thought was very modest, very reasonable, and this year it's 7.2%. So the only thing that I would ask is that department heads at least try to do a little bit more belt tightening this year. I was a little disappointed in the unemployment numbers. I know you said they've gone down, but they're still quite high. 7.4% is high for this community. The state unemployment is, I think, below 5%. The national unemployment is below 4%. So that was the only thing that I thought was I was a little disappointed in. But again, the numbers from each department I think are a little high this year, and I wouldn't mind if they could do a little bit more belt tightening, but we'll get into it more as we go along. Thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
Very good. Anyone else? Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just appreciate you and your staff for the budget presentation and the professionalisms that you have shown thus far this year, and I look forward to the hearings here coming this week, next week,
was gonna say,
week
they start
after,
this
and all
week.
that kind of stuff. So it's always a long part of our job, but I really do appreciate all the hard work from you guys. Thank you.
Anyone else? Very good. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Very good. We are adjourned.